Welcome to the Mischief. I'm Vallen, and this is Thaumcraft from Minecraft 1.12.2. Today I'm going to be covering the basics of alchemy. There we go, and you can see here that, oh look, there's a V's discount. It's because I'm wearing my goggles are revealing, in which case I'm also going to recommend that going back onto the fundamentals page, if you choose your Discovering Infusion tab, you can make Enchanted Fabric, which is just string and wool in an arcane workbench with a little bit of vis. You can then make yourself some thaumaturge's robes, leggings, and boots, and thus reduce further the cost of your arcane workbench crafting. Essentia crafting, we just need to make a smeltery here, which I have already set in place. My discount is pretty darn good. I can then put this in here, and I now have my smeltery. Going back in here, I can complete this research, which is wonderful. Warded jars and Essentia smelting. It's great. Reason being is that warded jars, they start off here, look at this, I've warded jars. It's already accessible, it's great. But this, you'll also probably need to make at least one arcane alembic. And if you look here, we've got those Essentia filters I said was a crafting ingredient. You'll need to use them at this point in order to make them. You can make multiples of these. I'm going to recommend you make at least one, though you can get away with probably like 5 or something like that if you so desire. So with them in place, they are very, well, these things work together. You put down your Essentia Smeltery, and on top, at least one alembic, if not more. You can stack them on top of each other even further, going up very high. But in this case, I'm just going to demonstrate the one. Now to go along with these, if you look in your Thaumonomicon, warded jars and labels are going to be very key. If you look here, a warded jar is made with some kind of glass pane, plus a slab of wood of some sort, and only 5V at a time. Make a whole bunch of these, like probably 20 at least to start with, and it's going to be very key. Now you can, of course, upgrade it to a void jar by just putting in a Perdicio crystal and a little bit more V in your workbench. And what that means is that, well, first let me get some of these warded jars. And I will put a few of them down here. You can see that these are, well, warded jars. You can actually grab them, break them, pick them back up, etc. But they will store liquid Essentia, sort of like how it's in the Crucible, but in a different way, because you can't actually pull liquid Essentia out of the Crucible. This Essentia Smeltery allows you to do so, which is kind of like an upgraded version of your Crucible for that aspect. Now each of these will have a maximum capacity of liquid storage of around 255 Essentia, if I'm not mistaken. I could be on that. But if you are trying to constantly keep feeding into this container more of the same type, because they only carry one type of Essentia at a time, that's where a void version would be good, because otherwise it would like stop up the works if you're trying to feed into this and it's already full. A void warded jar, as shown here, a void jar, would allow you to constantly keep feeding into it, and the overflow would just be, well, voided into nothingness. Now, of course, you have your brass lid braces, which, if you look on here, it does say that when used on a jar, they will prevent Essentia being drawn from or placed into the jar by anything other than tubes, which is going to be our next source of research. So there is a good reason for that. This allows you to mix tubes with your warded jars, as well as kind of remote access, which is more advanced stuff we're not going to be getting in today, but it is something that it's just a little optional item that you may or may not ever use. And then, of course, we've got labels. Labels are made with a very simple recipe. You can slap them on the outside simply by putting it on here, but as there's no Essentia in it, it's not actually going to do much of anything. But let's start actually using some of this. I recommend that you actually use a little bit of elementum for your smelting purposes in this, just because it's going to be that much better, but only if you're doing mass quantities. If you're doing small quantities, try and put a small amount of fuel in here as possible. But for now, I'm going to put that in here, and we're going to toss in a torch, because it has 3 aspects on it, and I figure that this is going to be very good to use for such an example. If I put this in here, it's going to smelt up, it's gone forever. Bye-bye torch. And then it goes up into here. You can see that there's a little bit of flux going into the air. Every time you use one of these, about 20% of the Essentia that is created is going to be voided. Yeah, into the atmosphere. not really voided, but it's just going into the environment. If I grab my thermometer, you can see I've got 1 flux in the area, but it's like I said, I've been keeping things fairly minimal. This is going to kind of, well, speed things up, but that might be a good thing. Anyway, you can see by looking here with my goggles are revealing, I have 4 lux in this 1 alembic. Where the other 2 aspects go? They're still in there. So you're going to want to take a warded jar, and you can click on here with it to fill it with that aspect. Now this one here currently has 4 lux in it, and you can see it has a little durability bar type thing. That means that it has an item in it. If I right click on here again with it, nothing happens because you can only hold 1 aspect or 1 essentia at a time, 1 type of essentia at a time. So if I click on this one, I can get the potentia, and of course the last one was lost because there was some voiding going on. So I can put these down and I can use them in the future just by looking at them. If I take my blank label, I can actually label these things, which is going to be pretty darn cool. If I shift right click on the label, it comes off. If I shift right click on a jar, it voids it into the atmosphere. So you're going to want to be careful with that. If I take this blank label, put it on the outside, and I shift right click on the side without the label, it goes into the atmosphere. So that's another thing to be aware of, is that if you shift click on the face that has the label, you can do that and get it back. So let's toss something a little bit more in here. I have 4 torches I'm putting in. It's still using up the remaining smelting procedure that's in here. I'm going to pick up these warded jars that I had, and I'm going to right click on here once I know it's done smelting all of them. There we go. I'm getting a bunch of luxes now filling into here. There was Ignis before, which I now have a little bit of Ignis. And you can tell when it's done because it'll just stop really. You know, it's pretty much done at this point. There we go. And then I've got the potential. You can see how this is slower with 1 alembic. If I get more alembics on here, it can go much faster. It all depends on how much materials you want to go with on this. So I still have a little bit of fuel left. If I put in 1, 2, 3, 4 of those torches, then I might be able to continue on with this. You can see that there's lux, and into the next one will go some more stuff, whether it be potentia or ignis once it's done, but each one of these alembics will only hold 1 type of essentia as well. They're similar to a warded jar, just a temporary one, and they can store a decent amount in each one. I've got some lux here, and I've got potentia in this one, and then of course I've got ignis. There we go, and that's the easy way of getting it. Now of course you saw before in the Thaumonomicon, back over here under basic alchemy, there was glass phials. Now these can be used to store liquid essentia as well, but glass phials have a restriction, whereas the warded jars have less of one. A glass phial will only store 8 or 9 rather of a specific type. So if I put these down, let's drop the warded jars that I have down here, and you can see that I have 6 ignis, right? Let's take a glass phial. Nothing. I have 36 lux. Oh, I can fill these up, and each one of them has 10. There you go. I've totally was wrong on this. Each one of these files will hold 10. So this one here I can't use. But if I want, I can actually put it back in as well with no loss or anything like that. So this is a way of, taking a little bit out. And if you look, it just has 10 essentia of each on there. So you can actually take 10 of this out and throw it in there. It's a little bit different way of storing essentia that you can use in alchemy or other things. And it would allow you to not have to use quartz all the time with your little slivers. Now I'm going to show off at least one more, if not 2 more things here real quickly, and that is Essentia Tubes. The progress for this, obviously I need to do a little bit more observation. Don't forget to scan all the new stuff that you have made so that you can therefore benefit from such wonderful things here. And then you'll need some files of different essentia. You have 4 different types. And of course, I took preparations so that you guys would have a little bit easier access to do so. Now, let's start with the easy one here, the file of essentia for Vinculum, which you can get Vinculum, which is like that trap icon, from Amber, or an oak door or some other door type. Those are your most common ones that I could think of. Amber you'll find in, while you're mining around and stuff. The next easiest one, which isn't technically easy, is probably going to be Alienus, which you'll find the most easy one from an ender pearl. You're going to probably want to toss in a couple of these. These are things that you're going to have to smelt up in your Essentia Smeltery, and then put them probably in a warded jar, if not a phial of Essentia. And if ever you need to clear these things out, you know, you can always just break the things. But yeah, Flux goes into the atmosphere. Anyway, besides Alienus, we've got Alchimia, which you can feasibly... let me grab some here, grab some crystals, put them in here. I can put crystals in, and I can toss a piece of coal in here for smelting, and it will actually have the thing, you can smelt up your crystals and get these, turn it back into liquid this way. But yeah, there's still that byproduct possibility that might go into the air. So that's just something to be aware of. Now, continuing on with Alchemia, though, we've got Gunpowder, has a little bit in it, has 5, but then you've got a whole bunch of Potentia and Ignis in there. You've got a brewing stand, has 25 on there, and it has a whole bunch of base ones, plus some Fabrico, which isn't too bad. You could do that. Magma Cream has 9 Alchemia on it, little Ignis, little Aqua, little Victus, and then Blaze Powder. It's probably the simplest one that I could think of. Because it's got 5, 5, and 1, you know, the least amount of overflow. This one here, you'd probably have to toss in 2 Magma Creams, which you can always craft those with some slime and stuff, but slime isn't always easy to come by as Blaze Powder is in the Nether. So if you don't want to go into the Nether, you got Gunpowder at least. And then you've got the most difficult one, or at least the most challenging? I don't know. Most dangerous. Yeah, that sounds about right. Tainted stuff. Vitium. Vitium is something that you're going to want to actually store up as much of as possible. So in order to get Vitium, I'm going to need to take you to another place. So here I am out in kind of an open area that I can look down upon from a nearby area. I'm going to put down some Nitor, and then I'm going to put down a Crucible on top of that, add in a bucket of water. I'm going to throw in a bunch of droppers just because they've got a ton of aspects on them. It doesn't really matter what you put in here as long as you've got a whole bunch of aspects you can throw in. And this is how you're going to basically generate taint. You then void that into the atmosphere. And yeah, if I hold my thermometer, you can see that there's a whole bunch of flux. Research completed, flux. Hooray! That means on the very beginning here, you now have a little bit of information about flux. Let the flux build. This is pretty much what you're going to need to do in order to progress, in order to get tubes and some other more efficient materials. If you want to continue on with this, you can easily just keep adding more materials into this, and things like this will happen. As you just noticed, we've got this little rift has just appeared. Anything that you throw into it will be instantly destroyed. If you walk into it, it will hurt, so I recommend you don't. And you're probably going to want to stay not too far away. Oh, looks like I found myself a hallowed hill in the process, which is going to probably have some loot underneath here. But if you look up above and you just kind of wait for a while, with some kind of weapon in hand, you'll probably find something like this happen. From that area is going to be this, which, yeah, I got a little too close. I need to run away because it's going to kill me. That is Taint Poison, which is very, very damaging. Oh my gosh, that was a very near casualty right there. But I do have a ranged weapon. I can shoot this thing. It's got 70 plus health. And any animals that go near it will actually become tainted as well. And you can see here it is spreading fibrous taint around. What you actually need is going to be some taint blocks to show up. But you'll have to be careful because sometimes those rifts will also spawn wisps, which they can be little floating electrical entities that can drop Vis shards, Vis crystals. But you actually want this guy to taint the area. But like I said, I don't recommend you do this back at your house because whatever it taints will be destroyed in the end. So yeah, I left my crucible down there, a little bit of a mistake. That should be okay, I think. But it'll kill or convert trees, stones, and other things. You can attempt to try and contain a rift, but it will not do you much good. So I'll be back once this thing has kind of, well, ruined a bit of the landscape. So there we go. This has been a bit of time, maybe just a few minutes, and you can see that there are some other things forming nearby, some darker purple areas as well. At this point, that's probably when you want to start killing this thing, because you're going to get some of these materials. Now, the fibrous taint, you're not going to really get. You can't like shear it up or anything like that. But once you get a whole bunch of these, I recommend a lot more than what I've got here. you can start zapping this thing and trying to, you know, pretty much kill it so that you can then approach without getting killed by that taint cloud that forms when you're within range. There we go, finally took it out. And it dropped a little bit of Vitium as well. So you've got here your fibrous taint. Don't be afraid to scan this stuff. It's going to be very key for just about everything. Gather up what materials you can, and don't stand on the tainted stuff for too long, because it will start hurting you. And it doesn't matter what material you use, it's going to take you a long time to harvest. There we go, I finally got my first block. Let's see if I can get my second one. And yes, if you leave these in the world, eventually they'll just turn into porous stone and you won't gain the benefits of it. So you do want to gather these as quickly as possible so that they don't just become null and void to you. There you go. So from that little, I don't know, excursion, I was able to get 3 Vis crystals worth 3 Vitium each, and 2 tainted blocks worth 5 each. So between those, I might have enough for 1 vial of Vitium Essentia. Alright, home sweet home, and I am back to try and smelt this stuff up. Put these in here, get a little bit of fuel to burn it up, plus some of the tainted stuff that we have, and hopefully I will have enough. In this case, I did not, so yes, you're going to want to make sure that that creature out there basically will taint a lot of area, or at least a whole chunk of it, so that you can gather up a whole bunch of the materials. In this case, though, I'm in creative, and I can spawn this stuff in willy-nilly to try and get the results I'm looking for. Let's put a couple more in here and see what we can get. There we go. All right, now that I have enough, I can set that down, and I can use a file to gather the last ingredient. With all of the Essentia files in my inventory, I can therefore continue on with Essentia Tubes and complete that progress. And it opens up a whole lot of stuff. No, I'm not going to be covering all these things. I will cover, however, some of the real basic stuff. And that's basically going to be Essentia Tubes, the Resonator, and the valve. So if I were to want to pipe some of this out, I have some Potentia in here and a little bit of Terra, but I don't have anything over here. Oh, I've got Potentia over here. Or, yeah, I'm going to need more of those Essentia Tubes. There we go, that should do. And now I can just easily run this pipe straight over here. But no, I can't, because if you connect multiples together of different types, you're going to have a little problem. So I recommend Shift and then whatever your option is to bring up your circle. In this case, it's F is default. So then you can right-click with an empty one in order to disconnect these and therefore stop them from having that kind of problem. Or you can continue and reconnect them and have them flow across as you want. Now, if you are to use Essentia valves, that will probably make it a little simpler. You can just harvest these up with a regular pick, but I do recommend that if you do this, that you can just, kind of put your valves down and make it a little bit simpler on you. Yes, it's going to be a little bit leaky at first, but don't worry, you can get that all straightened away once you've got things, well, straightened away. So yes, you can get all sorts of crazy Essentia valves going on with all of this stuff here, but it's not really going to help out as much as you might think. What instead I recommend, if you want to keep a very basic beginner setup, is that you actually just keep it so. You keep it simple. You just use your standard Essentia Tubes, which you might think, well, Vallen, these don't all really work together. If you don't want to spend a lot of materials on it, you really want to go for more a remote access option instead of the tubes, then just don't spend the stuff on it. You can actually keep things from connecting, simple enough, and when you want them to go to the right place, you can. In this case, I've got Terra going a little too far. There we go, and then I can re-enable this, and Terra is going to go down into this. There we go. Very simple. And yet all of the pipes are currently here. I'm just right-clicking with my caster gauntlet, and therefore I can connect and unconnect everything as needed. Now I have Potentia over here, so let's disconnect this, reconnect this, reconnect here, unconnect there, and there we go. That's going to go over here and start filling that one up. There we are. And what does this do? The Essentia Resonator? This will tell you the different kinds of, well, vacuum that is going on. The further away it is, the less vacuum there is. But the closer it is, the better it's going to be. So if I connect this, and then I use here, you see it says 31 Vitium, 27 Potentia, because it's connected to the Potentia. I disconnect this one, and then I do this. It's just going to say 31 Vitium. So it's further away, it's going to have less vacuum on this. So you can actually change things up a little bit in that aspect if you want, especially with using the valves, which valves you just kind of right click and you can open or close. You don't need your caster's focus or your caster gauntlet for this. But I do recommend if you just want to have a way of piping these out so you're not constantly picking these up and right clicking on your alembics, that you can make a very simple pipe network and use it in that manner. And with that being said, I also recommend that you actually go the extra step with alchemical metallurgy. Make yourself some thaumium ingots, which is very simple with precantatio and terra. If you don't remember precantatio, just make an arcane pedestal, as you see here. And the recipe for it is just a bunch of slabs and stuff. And that is actually going to be good for at least 5 of the precantatio itself. And that can allow you to make the thaumium that you need, or the precantatio and the terra that you need for the thaumium. Just toss in an iron ingot, etc. And with your progress made, you should be able to continue on. Complete that. You won't be able to access any of the void items, but you can then make the Thaumium Essentia Smelter, which just requires a Thaumium plate, which in a crafting grid is just going to be 3 Thaumium, makes you some of that. Click on here and you can actually upgrade straight away with your Essentia Smelter to a Thaumium one, which instead of a 20% flux creation into the atmosphere, it'll be about 15% on average, and it's going to smelt things up at a much faster rate than the old Essentia Smeltery. And this will allow you to at least less pollute your environment and make things a little bit faster. So I think that's pretty much going to cover it for today's bit by bit on basic alchemy. If you guys enjoyed this, please be sure to give a like, comment, subscribe, and as always, be sure to spread the mischief to others. And if you want to support the mischief, we always have links in the description below. And until next time, folks, I'll see ya.